Well, I guess we'll get going. Our Peter Burrows isn't here yet, but I'm sure he'll be along before too long. So I'd like to welcome everybody here to the annual meeting of the Middlebury Community Television. Our board is here, and I'd like to introduce board members. Here's Board Chair Len Rowell, Secretary George Bellerose, Susan Shashak, who is the Select Board representative, Maria Graham, our newest member, who is representing the, although not officially in our charter, but she is representing the Ilsley Library. And then we've got Jennifer Molyneux, who is an ID4 representative, and missing is our Vice Chair, Brian Alexander, who is on the road as usual. And so I'd like to turn the meeting over at this point to Board Chair Len Rowell to go through the business part of the meeting.
Okay. With an annual meeting, you always do need to have a business section. Our pattern for our regular meetings is the same pattern we'll follow today, and that is we do the things which need to be done, that typically needs to be done, but we do them as quickly as possible. If there's any questions, we certainly want to consider those. But we're an organization that's really trying to look at the future and move us out into the future, serve the community. And so that's what we want to be about. And that's part of the questions that are in the discussion. And so let me begin and we'll move right along. I'd like to invite a motion on the annual meeting from 2014. There's a copy here, and it's a one-page report. Is there a motion for the approval of those minutes? Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And everybody votes. Okay, good. And let's be clear. Okay. Democracy. We're for it. And as one of my friends who conducts meetings, he always he says there are no nays and puts his head down. No, but we will. If you want to say nay, that's okay. Treasurer's report, Susan.
That is me. At the third page, it's kind of fun to do this. It'll be a lot shorter than the town meeting. I wanted to note that we have a 4% increase in our operating expenses budget over last year, and the major driver for that is well-deserved and long time coming salary increases for Kurt, Kathy, and Dick this year that were approved by the board. So other than that, there is a $750 increase in operating expenses. If you look at the top half of the budget, several of those operating expenses go up and down, but the whole total is only $750 increase. The major driver there is an increase in dues. We have joined the Alliance for Community Media this year. There's been an increase in dues for our membership in vans, and there is a workshop that we'd like to send the staff to that is very valuable this year. There's also been an increase in the legal fees, and that is van assessing for legal help for Comcast's certificate of public good this year.
It's actually, the work will begin this year, but the certificate
Will
of
be in a
public good is
couple years.
2017.
Okay. Other than that, are there any specific questions that people had?
Take a minute.
Take a minute. We'd be happy to help. Probably need Dick's help to actually answer all of them, but.
Any questions? Is there a motion on the budget?
I move its approval, or can't I?
Sure.
Second that.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It was passed. There's no other business, right? Any other business anyone wants to bring before this group where it's going to become an informative piece in terms of the first part of the program, and then it's going to become a process of exchange and dialogue around community concerns in the second. So plenty of opportunity to raise questions and share views. Is there a motion then to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Okay, so now we're into the discussion and information part of the meeting, and the question that we've been like to ask, and we've been doing this for a few years now, is how do MCTV and PEG Access TV fit into the local media landscape? And so I'm going to just do a little bit on government access and public access, and I would like to acknowledge some of the people in the room who have a lot of experience with MCTV. Probably Lewis goes back further than just about anyone.
1800s.
Was it that far back? Because MCTV was incorporated, I believe, in
1985.
1985. That's right. Yeah, it was right around the turn of the year of '85 and '86, and so Lewis did some early work here, and he did a great video on Charlie Mraz. That if I could find a copy, I'll play it again.
You don't have a copy of it?
Yeah, I've got it one somewhere, but you could bring it out. And
Finding them.
and also back in time, David Andrews' son John and his friends used to do a program in 1990 when we first came to the Ilsley, and it was a really great thing that.
Put them a riff on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
It was pretty embarrassing, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Sounds better and better.
So over the years, we've had a lot of kids in here that did some great stuff, and then also we have here the great producer and star of Middlebury 5-0, and.
Stop.
And then
Have your celebrity in the room.
we have a couple of other celebrities. Susan and Kathleen are regulars on the select board meeting, which meets, and Laura too. I'm sorry, Laura. Yeah. What can I say? And I told John Tenney once that the select board meetings meet the definition of a sitcom, in that you have familiar faces having familiar reactions to mildly unfamiliar circumstances.
I know you were that star, huh?
So we've got someone who's fairly new to public access, Ron Payne, and I wanted him to just say a couple words about his experience with MCTV.
Okay. I'm president of the Otter Creek Audubon Society. We're the Addison County chapter of the National Audubon Society. And I got involved with them about 2009 or so, and I was bird watching, and the previous president kind of grabbed me at Otterview Park and said, come help us with these bird walks. And I started doing that, and then I got involved with the website, and then I was on the board, and then a few years later I'm the president. So one of the things, I probably would have gotten involved in Otter Creek Audubon earlier. And if you don't know what we do, is we do education outreach things. We have bird classrooms, bird projects in classrooms. We have education grants to send classes in Addison County out on field trips, and we do education outreach things. And one of the big things we do is our Cabin Fever lecture series. every year, 3 talks in the winter, January, February, March, on natural history topics, usually birds and animals, sometimes plants. When I first got involved with the board, I realized that we weren't recording these things. And I always wondered why. We're doing them right downstairs in the library. And after the first year, I kind of, well, we should do that. And I called up Dick, and he gave me the quick training, and we got it out. Got them recorded, got them on TV. And then we were able to get them digitized, and we get them on our website, and get the information about what we're doing, extend the value of those talks that we give. Really good outreach tools, goes into our social media. It all ties together, it's great stuff. Our neighbors to the north, Green Mountain Audubon Society, their president has been watching our videos looking for speakers for their talks up there, so it's been a really good thing to do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Peter, we've just started a little bit, but it's fine. Come on up front.
Okay.
So this is, so Ron's giving you a good example of what public access is, and I like to say that our programming that we have on MCTV is grassroots driven, because it's really comes from within the community. We have people like Ron who have decided that they want their programs on MCTV, and so we do what we can to help. And then we have people like Chris and Jennifer who've decided that they wanted to do a show as well. And that's really our mission in public access, is to just facilitate these, facilitate the community to put together shows to go on the air. Government access is a little different story. We feel very strongly that we are operating towards making a more transparent government. We try to cover just about every public meeting that we absolutely can, and we have regular viewers now. We have had since way back in. I think I did my first select board meeting live in 1989, and in 1992 there was an exit poll at town meeting, and it turned out that there was a huge number of cable viewers who watch select board meetings regularly, and so that's been pretty much going on ever since. And so
Says something about the lack of entertainment.
No, it speaks to our qualification as a sitcom.
there you go. So in our the trinity, the PEG of our mission, that is the P and the G part. And now I would like to turn it over to Kurt Broderson to explain a little bit about the educational part, and he will also talk about our new media lab. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today, is that afterward you'll have a chance to go and see the media lab in action.
So as Dick said, my name is Kurt Broderson. I'm the technology coordinator. I know most people, but not everybody. But my position is half MCTV, half Ilsley, so I kind of help bridge the missions of the two organizations, which is a great place to be in. Sort of some highlights of education things in the past year. Since last annual meeting, we've had 4 week-long camps with full attendance. Those are pre-registration through the library. 3 over the summer, 1 during April vacation, 1 during February vacation, although this February we decided we'd do something different, and we went to the Snow Bowl instead. And we set up shop and let people edit video that they had shot at the Snow Bowl. And some of them are still working downstairs on stuff they shot during February, so that's been kind of fun to see. We also run a weekly drop-in program called Youth Media Lab after school on Tuesdays that anybody with an interest in movie making can show up for. You don't need to register. And we kind of meet the kids where they are and move them forward as storytellers and movie makers and users of technology and creators of technology. some things, there's one teacher and one administrator in the audience. I didn't do as much outreach in the schools this year as I did last year, this current school year as I did last year, and that's actually not a bad thing, because some of the seeds that sort of we planted last year and worked on, the staff is able to continue with those independently. I worked pretty closely with Julie Altimos at Mary Hogan Library, School Library, and I don't need to do that as directly this year, and she's continuing some of the things we started last year. But I do like to get out into the schools. I've been in Kate's classroom in the past. Tim O'Leary's AP English class is working on sort of mini documentaries that last year I became aware of it sort of too late to be involved in the process, but I've been in his classes a couple times this year, and the topics were great last year, and they were really things that I thought, you know, adults in the community should be approaching, and the kids are doing a great job with it. And the one thing that usually got in the way of being sort of ready to go on air was they would use music that was under copyright, and by getting involved in the process earlier, before they'd chosen music and put it in their video, and that was that. You know, we can air things like that. There were last year they did a video on the nurses' sort of union organizing efforts, which I thought was a topic that adults should be dealing with. Not that kids shouldn't be, but that was a good one. Sort of the history of kid space, and that one still gets. I see that on YouTube getting continual views. The readathon video in 2012, we started working to sort of support literacy at Mary Hogan with the readathon's been going on longer than that, but MCTV's involvement in it goes back to 2012 when we helped make a music video to support literacy at the elementary school, and we borrowed a song that an elementary school in California had written and recorded, new lyrics to a kind of current pop song. And we got permission to borrow their song and did our own video, and then started writing our own lyrics the year after that. So we are now we just did our 4th year, and we're starting planning for next year's video, which involves current 5th graders picking a song, writing new lyrics to it, recording it professionally across the street at Lion Tone Studios, where Clint Bierman's studio is, with Chuck Miller, the music teacher. Then in the fall, as 6th graders, they kind of get back and we make the video piece of it to then launch the readathon in October. So it's kind of a lengthy time from April to October. But we got a lot of stuff to cram in there, including summer vacation when they have to go to video camp. So, some other kinds of things on the horizon. Starting with the littlest kids, Dana Anderson from Building Bright Futures, which is kind of a quasi-state, quasi-nonprofit. Len may know more about the history of it than I do. Kind of looking at early childhood, and she's the Addison County person, and we're working about getting a show focusing on early education started. So that is a possibility down the road. David Sharp was on Betty Nuovo in January or early February, talking about education, financing in particular, and sort of what's going on with thoughts about consolidation and some other issues. And then one thing that just came up very recently that I'm very interested in, Patrick Green, the principal at MUMS, and I talked a couple weeks ago at a board meeting. He's interested in starting an after-school video news club or program, which would provide some in-house programming for mums, where you could see it playing in the lobby, and then it would give us some kid-generated content to put on the air here. So I'm really excited about seeing where that goes. Those are all the highlights of this past year that I was going to talk about for education. Let me talk a little bit about the Media Lab, and then
and then
turn things over to Peter. And
invite people to come
Sure.
look at it afterwards.
So my position as technology coordinator was kind of the first tangible result of the cooperation between Ilsley and MCTV that's gone on for a while in terms of, both organizations are funding my budget. And the room is similar to that in that it came out of both organizations. There are 3 primary purposes for the room, and they've come out of sort of years worth of hearing things that the library could use, patrons needed, things that MCTV saw as filling holes that we needed filled. The first and what's been the most popular so far is digitizing older sort of analog resources, videotapes, cassette tapes, LPs, photos, slides, negatives, anything that's older physical sort of media, turning that into digital media. And that's been the biggest use in the few weeks, almost a month that we've been open. Second use is creating things digitally from scratch. You could run an internet radio station or an internet TV station right from that room. One of our producers that I thought was going to be here tonight, Ramona Guadalupe, is a minister from the Burlington area who does a Spanish language, English language show every other week. And because it's just her talking, she could do that entirely in here and broadcast to an audience anywhere in the world. Because she reaches out to Spanish language speakers in Vermont and wider world, but migrant laborers with mobile phones, and that would be not that I want to discourage her from being upstairs with us, but you could do that in a place like this entirely on your own with very little support. And then the third use is as kind of a quieter, more private, higher quality place to Skype. So whether it's with your grandchildren or whether it's with lawyers taking depositions at a distance and recording them, or we've had people in the past, kind of good example is college professors who some national TV network wants to interview. We don't have a green screen upstairs, and we have elevator noise coming, and it's not a soundproof studio. This is not soundproof, but it's quieter, and we're going to be working more on the sound baffling in there. But there's a green screen in the background. You could be filmed there at a distance and then replace the background with anything you want. Nice sunny day in Middlebury, we could just plop it right there and all be really nice and warm on a spring day. So I'll be around after the meeting kind of closes up to take people on kind of quick tour of what's available in there, and some people have already been here. We did a soft opening over Valentine, or just before Valentine's Day, doing video Valentines from the library, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 stars of that experience right here. So either they can pay me not to show their videos.
I think we need to see this.
Oh wait, 5. Kevin's here too. 1, 2. Alex has kind of stole the show. He's not here. He's downstairs. But, so our keynote speaker for tonight, kind of segueing from my role in education and outreach, is Peter Burrows, who's the superintendent of Addison Central Supervisory Union. I think most of you know him because he's been on every TV show we've had.
Not quite.
No, there was a while where he was the most on TV person, I think, right after he arrived. Chris interviewed him. I think you were on Betty's show.
Yeah, Jamie's show.
Yep, so we were seeing him more than various hosts. So without further ado, Peter Burrows.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk and kind of have a discussion really about media literacy, and MCTV and Middlebury itself and our community. As you all know, I mean, you're all sitting here because you understand how powerful MCTV is in our community, and jokes aside about how there's not a lot going on, it's a critical link I found in the 2 years that I've been here to really connect the community to what's happening and to provide a voice both for folks that have a lot to say and for folks that maybe don't have a lot to say, and find that that MCTV is a great vehicle to be able to be part of the democratic process. I think we live in, our community is pretty spread out, and when you look at the kinds of media that we currently have, to really engage in civic discussion, they're limited. And I think MCTV has proven to really fill a very, very critical niche in the community here. I've been shocked at how many people watch MCTV, and I'll be walking around town or out in the community, and people will say, "Oh, I heard you say that," or "Oh, what about that?" and I don't know if you're able to actually tally how many people are. Can you do that?
No, I wish we could.
Yeah, that would be nice. You need some Nielsen ratings or something.
Nielsen called up once and asked, and I said it was Nielsen, and I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, really?" And they said, "We just want to know whether you exist or not." I couldn't say any more than that.
That's funny. That is cool. Well, I think whatever the number is that we came up with here, you could triple it probably in terms of the number of viewers that are out there. And I think there's great potential. You know, and Kurt mentioned a little bit about the collaboration between pre-K-12 and MCTV. And I feel like that's a real burgeoning area that we need to explore and develop more. You've had a number of opportunities to work with specific teachers. I've been got to witness, Kate's part of the Bread Loaf Teacher Network, and they've been doing a collaboration with Bill Rich and a number of others, and involving media in that. And I think what I see right now in our school system is a school system that's looking at where do we go from where we are right now. We talk a lot about technology. We talk a lot about giving students a voice and giving students access. But I think up to now, we've had pockets where folks that are really have the experience working with media are able to provide those services, but systemically, we're not yet there in terms of what I think the potential is for students in media, and really developing those civic skills that are critical. And part of what's happening now, and Kevin is actually on one of our action teams, we're in a strategic plan in ACSU, and we're looking at all of these different aspects, looking at technology, looking at our systems, and trying to figure out how do we respond to a world that has really changed dramatically. And I think my experience in the school system has been that there's a somewhat of a divide between how people view technology. Some people view technology as this thing that's out here. It's something you go to, you do a technology unit, or you use it in some way, and other people are living and breathing technology, and it becomes a medium and a vehicle for learning, and that is incredibly powerful. And we can't continue to live with textbooks and simple print media when we see what's happening for kids. Their respiration is digital media now. And in society, when you read about media literacy, and when you look at kind of how families, how school systems, how academics view media, I think there was an initial, when media became a real integral part of our students' lives, we got a little afraid and we kind of backed up and said, I don't know where my kid is. They're on their iPad all the time, or they seem like they're disengaged. And I think it's something that we need to wrestle with, but we need to really, I think, embrace technology and embrace digital media, and figure out how to develop all those kinds of skills that we're afraid our students are going to lose by using media, and support them in using it. And I think that's a bit of uncharted territory in terms of kind of the next phase, and looking at designing curriculum in our schools. So one of the things as I was thinking about coming here today to talk about media and media literacy, and interestingly, I almost studied media literacy in my doctoral program, looking at media literacy and education. So it's something that I'm really interested in and see great value in. Media literacy is very much, I think, connected to what is happening in schools as we transition to Common Core, and we look to really make students the progenitors of their own learning. We're, I think, moving from an era where the teacher got up, presented, and the students assiduously wrote things down, tested, and we moved on. I think we've left that era, and we're moving to a time period where the classroom is really messy. And a lot of that messiness is about students working with media and digital media to really develop their own projects and experience the learning targets that we want them to learn, rather than being fed the specific things that they're going to learn. In terms of looking at media literacy in our schools, I think for a long time there have been, I'd say for the last 10 or 15 years, there have been a lot of proponents that say media literacy should be in schools in the same way that we're teaching about health, and the same way we're teaching about social studies and other subject areas, that it's that critical in our lives today. And when you look at what a student growing up in 2015 is experiencing, and I think it's as powerful here in a somewhat rural community as it is in an urban area. But they are forming their worldview, they're forming their community, a global community now. They're forming their conception of the world in a digital landscape. And it's, I think, critical that when we're looking at our school systems, we're really trying to find ways to help to shape that with them, rather than seeing that process that children are going through now as this kind of separate social experience that students are having, that it's part of the educational process. So I think it's really, really exciting. I mean, this is a really, I think, a powerful time in terms of how we're looking at technology and media and where we're going in blending digital media, technology, and media literacy into our classrooms. And I'm curious, I wanted to quickly have people talk with a partner to start a conversation about media literacy and perspectives on media literacy, but I think we need to start with what it is first, before we have any kind of conversation about what we can do with it. So if you could quickly turn to a partner that you're sitting next to and talk about what is your definition of media literacy?
I remember when I was on the school board, there were 10 performance levels prior one of them had to do with I don't have the word. Just wanted to really assess what it was. And the other one, another one was but I think it's I like comfort level. It's just like any kind of environment. Something else, some environments.
I like idea. Talking about Trisha's doing library some of the programs here, she comes out and I'm gonna pick up like 5 weeks where we'll do. It's like it's teaching kids something.
Stereotype it all on every teacher, so it's certainly, I look at
Very long. Mostly in the high school. High school is much easier to teach. Latin teachers
it's so striking. So it's all about living in
aware that
that's helpful. If you have that, she is needing successful.
My wife teaches there, so she and Martha are doing something with school.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember when, for the first thing, that was first idea. At least you could have like some other. They even had, you remember that Microsoft it was an operating system where it was like a cartoon. Now there's a little bit of this guy Bob who you start to see some real it didn't last. But Bob was some kind of an avatar.
My kids watch this on it.
And then all the role-playing games those of us who get born and remember throughout the years, I think some of it too is
yeah, which I talked to him about it because there were things where some of his slacked off, but we can offer for integrating something. Because a lot of us come outside. Let's look at what ACH is. That's what they saw. So you can do that.
How different are their personalities and their roles? Sort of the same
Okay, if we can come back together.
Social media.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. I think we nailed the definition. So what is media literacy? What are we talking about?
The ability to understand and analyze media, so not necessarily technology, because technology is a tool, but, media, so information.
Okay, so ability to understand media.
I use the term digital discernment as my goal, and sort of
Interesting.
the other negative side is digital distraction. That figuring out how to kind of contain digital inputs and discern them is very important.
Chris used a great term, I thought. He talked about the comfort, having a comfort level when you're immersed in the media.
Yeah. So kind of an understanding of
Yeah, just a feeling.
the mechanism?
A feeling of, not necessarily of mastery, but just enough of a comfort level so that when you're in the environment and being called upon to use media, that it's not something that's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you can do it.
Right.
And media these days, if you're using it, like in the past, you would be a consumer of media. You would watch media. You would be pretty passive in interacting with media. Now, you play a much more active role. It's much more a vehicle for communication. It's much more kind of back and forth. So it's much more a process of immersion. You're placing yourself kind of into the media rather than kind of standing back and being a spectator of it. So that you've got to have that willingness to kind of step forward and put yourself right in there.
And even when you don't know you're putting yourself forward, just when you think you're being a passive participant, your connectedness is being observed and analyzed, and the algorithms are figuring out
By a
what to send you
camera
next.
up here. Yeah, no, that's true. Okay. Others?
We talked about how, as adults, we tend to be trying to keep up with kids, who, for them, it's so innate in how they operate and learn, whereas certainly as a parent, I'm always several steps behind and usually trying to learn it much more in the feeding sort of sense, rather than the just give me that and I will make it work for you kind of sense. You know, it's keeping up with them because they're just so much further ahead.
And it's challenging for teachers too, that are being taught by their
I
students.
can only imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I think there's also print literacy. Can't forget about what is recorded in print in historical works. And to analyze what is true and what is not true. Where is deception being used to lead the public a certain way? We have more and more of that on television, newscasters who are fabricating stories. Reality TV, which is really not reality, is fabricated and exaggerated. And I think the kids, well, not only kids, adults, I think, tend to accept maybe too much of what the visual world is presenting, and we need to build in the schools or in our society skills for determining where something is being exaggerated or twisted to appear to mean something else.
That used to be part of the framework.
Yeah, it's one of the 10 performance targets.
Right, exactly. We remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if that still is.
Which framework are you referring to? The Vermont framework? Or
It was an ACSU thing.
There were 7
Jim
targets.
Lombardo was there. There were 10
Yeah.
things, and one of them was about the ability to discern fact from fiction in media, regardless of the source. They were
Performance targets,
Yeah.
that's
As
right.
opposed to the power standards, which
Yeah.
were,
Later.
they were simultaneous.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're still there, but they're not there in the same iteration. So they've mostly been, I think, incorporated into Common Core at this point in terms of those standards. But those same skills are being taught, and I think what we're looking at now in terms of the standards and analysis and those kinds of skills that students need. And I think just bringing this back to media literacy and media is students are both, as mentioned, creating and analyzing and absorbing. And you know, before it was, we grew up with television and we were receptors in a lot of ways, and there was some of that discernment that you're talking about. Now you receive and give at the same time. So the model has changed, and media has changed too. And I'm curious to know if, in thinking about MCTV and thinking about leveraging this incredible resource, how do you all see this fitting this new world that we're in? How does MCTV fit in terms of that educational piece of helping not just students, but I think the greater community develop that discernment to be able to have a voice, to analyze what's true, what's not true, and be part of a process to make our community better?
In a very sort of simplistic way, the libraries have summer reading programs for decades. And I think that there's going to be sort of an evolution of that into sort of summer media programs. I think the library is kind of a place where you can come to learn if you're a kid, but you can also have a little fun and explore your own interests. And I think that, you know, MCTV is a place where, especially with what Kurt's doing, but also just in general, where I think kids will have more opportunities to use those new media tools in a way that's guided, but it's also fun for them in off-school hours, potentially. So like over the summer or after hours.
What you've mentioned about not so much kids but adults, we've identified in the past that our two major strengths are sort of at different ends of the age spectrum, because we have older people who are really television viewers.
What is an old person?
Well, I'm an old person. I'm 67, but anyway, it's the people who grew up and see television in the old-fashioned way are the ones, and they're always very interested in public affairs, and so they're this cohort that watches MCTV, watches all the meetings at MCTV, and they watch regularly. And then we have the kids' camps and programs like what Kurt's doing that are very popular with the kids. In between, it's really hard to say. We've got Chris and Jennifer are a good sort of middle section where they're creating a show, but it's sort of an older talk show. And we're really missing a big chunk of the population in the middle, and we don't quite know how to grab onto something to work in that area.
Interesting.
They're on their own. No, they.
The millennials, they're all too cool for MCTV.
Well, and I think maybe part of what, as we're talking about how media have changed and how we interact now, part of it maybe is looking at apps and looking at things that are faster and can adapt more quickly and don't require 9 to 10 o'clock, or don't require some things that are more flexible, in terms of media and connection. I mean, those of you that are here now, what do you find yourself gravitating towards when you are looking to media and you want to find out what's happening, you want to be engaged? Where do you go? I know MCTV is one answer, but what else do you do?
Well, I think we tend to want to watch things on our schedule rather than somebody else's schedule.
Yeah.
And MCTV programs largely are available as streaming on the computer. I mean, I have streaming Netflix, and I'm happy to be able to watch movies when I want to watch them, and that sort of thing. And I'm 70, so I've already made that switch.
Yeah.
But to that point, we've heard that there's an obstacle to that, right? For our community to be able to view MCTV, because fewer and fewer have cable, so they're not going to be able to see it that way. And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, our online.
You can get it online.
I know you can get it online, but they're saying that it's not easy to watch it online, I guess. guess, for some? Is that an obstacle?
It's not easy to search. So that's fine. Right, but to watch is easy, but you gotta find it first.
Oh.
I mean, it also raises questions about the funding of MCTV, which is cable-based, of course.
Yeah.
As a former board member, we spent a lot of time sort of wondering how that was gonna sugar off.
Well, when looking at school systems, and we invest thousands and thousands of dollars every year in technology,
Right.
hoping that it's going to be static and it's going to stay for 10 years and this is going to be a great investment, and we soon find that the platform has changed, or how we interact with media changes so quickly that we have to adapt to. And I think that's one of the interesting things to hear about what's happening here in terms of thinking of different ways to engage students in developing and being part of the process of generation of some of what's coming from MCTV is really exciting.
You raised a point, and Dick, the millennials do stuff online, and you have an online presence, so that may be some way to reach them without thinking of the studio upstairs.
Yeah.
When we did our economy pitch on Monday, we had a millennial who finished up the show, was talking about getting millennials to blog, and she kept saying, millennials like to share. So if that's what they want to do, is share everything about their lives publicly online. So is there some role for MCTV in that sharing world, so they can do something? I don't know what it is, but
It could be
that's
coaching. Actually, as you said that, and as you were speaking, it's like that middle chunk of people might need to be assisted a little bit with something like that, but they can also be the coaches for the other ends.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be the way to engage them.
yeah, if they want to.
If they wanted to be, they could be with little kids or older people.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how to Skype, so I would enjoy somebody to teach me how to do
We
it.
got it right here. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, and I think if millennials, whoever it is, whatever we engage in has to be meaningful to us. So there has to be some kind of meaningful outcome to what it is that we're doing. And I think maybe that's something to think about in terms of this middle group that maybe hasn't found what that meaningful connection is yet to what MCTV is offering.
Well, and for those of us, Susan and I, the meaningful way to connect us now is through our kids, and I think that's why we're so interested in what Kurt is doing, and things that are maybe more flexible and less place and time based might be the way for MCTV to reach out more broadly to more kids. And I don't know, there's others too, they're taking care of their parents and kids. So I think, and time is crunched for us, so you're meeting us by catering and doing well for those two ends. So you might not need to worry so much about the middle. You might be doing it without knowing it.
I know my kids who are not really kids anymore, they're all, 30 or just about to turn 30. They left me in the dust when they were 12.
They're so in their sobs, or
two of them, and I can't listen to them for more than 15 minutes without just being completely overwhelmed. They'll give me advice on what to do, and I just can't keep up. And so they're doing just fine by themselves, and I don't know whether they see, what it is that MCTV could really offer them that they don't have with other forms of social media. I've always, 20 years ago, I was at a group of, with a group of my colleagues down in Bennington, and I said at the time, what's going to happen when everyone has a video camera and everyone has an internet connection, and what good are we going to be? And this one guy, John from Weybridge Community Television, he said, we'll always be needed as aggregators. And so that sort of stuck with me over the years, and I don't know exactly how to use that in this particular instance, but I think that like there have been these terms that have come up in the past, like portal. There was a time when everybody wanted to be the portal when the internet was first coming in, and you wanted to shunt everybody right to this one door, and on the way they'd see these ads or whatever. And so that's that's like not so much a form of aggregation as like a cattle prod to push you through a certain gate.
Right.
But I think that if we're a trusted source and people would say, well, maybe we could go check out MCTV for this, that's one possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you actually asked millennials what they want?
Yeah, a little bit. Not much.
Yeah.
I don't get much response.
Yeah.
As an aggregator, you're also exercising some discernment in determining what you're aggregating.
Mhm.
And I think the board does spend time figuring that out. I mean, we're not aggregating commercial messages, we're not aggregating hateful messages, so that there's.
Right, I mean, Pinterest is an aggregator.
Right.
Yeah. Susan?
That's the point I was just gonna make, is that we also offer multiple levels of that discernment, certainly for kids, on how to use different things and create and put it out there in a safe way. I mean, it's not, and also for adults to learn, and that sort of discernment comes in there of sort of what the rules that we have, that we operate through, but also just the different suggestions that are going out, and the shows that we do. There's a certain level with the government as well, a certain level of discernment that this is this production is something that you can trust. It's gavel to gavel, it's not edited. So I think that discernment comes in much more than we actually are thinking about from NCTV anyway.
Yeah. What are some of the, we just kind of touched briefly on students and what students need to know to be active, engaged citizens when they leave our school systems. I'm curious to know what you all think in terms of your experiences and what you see, any age in the school system. What do you feel like we need or they need?
I'd like to harken back to the media literacy question. And what struck me was that we were trying to seek two defined definition. And I'd be more interested in like Socratic literacy or analytical literacy. And that if you have that, media or whatever other form of literacy is taken care of. It falls within this larger tent of being discerning or analytical or skeptical or
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking, I think,
So
is the-
to me, that's more important than knowing the latest app.
Yes.
That, in 2 weeks there's a new app. But if you have critical thinking, you stay ahead of the game.
And apps don't relieve you of the need to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if there was one thing I'd want kids to know is that just because something turns up on Google doesn't mean you can believe it. I mean, that's kind of a basic principle.
Yeah.
The other thing I would want kids to know is how to get relief, because they're struggling to figure out how to not miss anything, so they're always on, but then they're restless, and so we want kids to feel balanced too.
What does that balance look like? I mean, that's a big question, and I think it's something that a lot of parents struggle with in terms of how much is too much, and talking about that larger analytical framework, the Socratic framework that you mentioned, I think is vital. I think there's another piece as well of students get absorbed into media or into technology, and the discernment, they can't tell that this is a time for me to be discerning. I'm gone. I'm one with the media. So what is that? What does that balance look like?
I don't know, teaching them interruptions, time management.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Sherry Turkle's book Alone Together is an important book with regard to just the destruction of family community when everybody's living their life through their devices. And I think somehow in families, just limiting the amount of that device time is It's a place to start. Anyway.
Knowing how to
Yeah.
set boundaries, I
Yeah.
think, and some self-awareness.
Yeah.
And it's not the only place in life where you have to set boundaries, but it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
There is a yearning for that a little bit, though. I think
Yeah.
a little bit of disconnectedness. And I know, even though I do speak for the library a little bit, and that we are trying to find more quiet places for patrons in the library, because people are looking for places to not necessarily be alone, but to maybe be alone together in a positive way, though. They want quiet space to
Yeah.
disconnect and
Yeah.
maybe just sit and read a book. And
Right.
so they're looking for some guidance
Well,
on how to do
Yeah,
that.
and it's interesting that you said that. I was a judge for Middlebury College's mid-core in January, and so this is where students in this class, and there were like 64 of them or something, put together these business ideas, and we
Yeah.
were judging them.
Yeah.
And in the group of 16 that I had, that I was working with, 3 or 4 of them were all about an opportunity to be unplugged. One was putting a separate room in the campus, and you actually left your cell phone at the door in a box, and you got it back at the end, and there was a train and a car. I mean, it was so interesting that these college kids were looking for that. So they're having trouble figuring out the boundaries and when to stop, because I think they don't want to miss out on things and whatever else.
Does Middlebury Union High School still do symposiums? Because I was so impressed the year that they did the symposium on what is truth. Very powerful, essential question. So maybe we do something like that, like with this question.
Yeah.
Even like what you
Yeah.
just said, what's media literacy and what do we want
Yeah.
from media
Yeah.
literacy, and see where it goes. That might be really interesting. Or how do we unplug?
And they had keynote speakers at this symposium.
It crossed what was very interdisciplinary. You had art, you had performance, you had speakers, you had a lot of student engagement, a lot of work to do that. I don't know if they're still doing that.
I don't think they've had a symposium for many years that I know of.
Yeah.
Frank Kelly, when he was principal, might have been the last person to organize one.
Oh, I think it's more recent than that.
Oh, it is?
It is, yeah.
Because my kids were exposed to it.
I've got to argue the other side a little bit here, though, because I read a great book that changed my mind on this. It was called It's Complicated. I looked it up. It's by Dana Boyd. She's the chief researcher for Microsoft. And she interviewed thousands of high school kids. And she said overwhelmingly they would have chosen to meet together had they had the time to do it. But they didn't have the time to meet together with their friends because they were so busy and so scheduled that they chose to meet online instead. And that was why they used social media. And a personal story, my father, of all people, who was a substitute teacher in his retirement career, convinced me that those digital devices in that community isn't necessarily the dumbing down or the disintegration of attention span. It's just more that they know how to do than we know how to do. So I think that there's kind of a balance that you have to strike between being able to pay attention in a meaningful manner to something and go in depth, and also be able to do all of these different things you can do with media at the same time. And there's an intelligence that's involved in that too. So I had to point that out because her main message in that book is the kids are all right.
Yeah.
And that we're,
That's Henry Jenkins, what he says too.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I mentioned it earlier, I think that's where in schools we're moving towards embracing technology and trying to figure out, when cell phones came into the classroom, it was this thing we had to push away and everything needs to go away, and there's that fear of losing attention span and really not being able to focus on the classroom. And I think our shift right now is figuring out how do we utilize technology and give students the ability to work within the world of media that is around us every day, to develop the analytical skills they need, to be active and engaged citizens, to be able to create with media. We haven't talked a lot about creation today, but I think that's a big piece that really we have to be teaching creation and analysis at the same time.
I think that was a great summary, Peter.
Wait, I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You jumped.
Almost summary.
want to say that kids are going to create something.
Yeah.
And what I love about Youth Media Lab is that they get practice creating something that's not sexting. And I think that's very valuable. Just to do anything, have any conversation, do any project, learn any other skills, because they're gonna want to be on camera. Let's have them be
See the power of it.
skilled. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think, thank you very
Oh,
much
yeah.
for coming, and I
Yeah.
think this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I noticed George has been scribbling furiously, and Kathy has been recording. And I think that we've got a lot to think about now. And so you're all invited to come and take a look at the Media Lab. Kurtz can show you around, and we've got the refreshments over here. George?
Dick, I might just mention the book, and I suspect many people here know about it. The first Wednesday series this month was David McCullough speaking about his book, You're Not Special. And he's been a high school teacher for 25 years, and he talks about many of the things that were discussed here, creating boundaries. What do we expect of our kids? What do they expect of us? What do they expect of the schools? And it's a very wise and witty summation of a lot of the questions that we've batted about. It's called You're Not Special and Other Encouragements, meaning that everybody has something that makes them special, but there are dangers in this pursuit of you have to go to this school or else. Parents say, if you don't do this, you're a failure. He taught in Wellesley, so
He knows what he's talking about.
so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But he says this is really applicable to school systems everywhere. The pressures are there.
Yeah.
How do we deal with them? And so he has very many common sense. Here's what has worked for me. It may not work for your family, it may not work for your school class, but here's some ideas, to think about. And certainly
That's
about
very
the,
good. And have you come across anything that addresses media literacy that you would advise us to look at?
Not anything off the top of my head that is kind of groundbreaking. There's a lot out there on media literacy that's helpful in getting an idea of what's happening. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot more to come. This is, I think, it's a question that we're going to continue to kind of grapple with as it changes around us. So it's exciting.
But I think the basic message you've given us is that a certain amount of embracing is inevitable.
I think so. I mean, I think
can't
it's
treat it as the antagonist.
Hug
No.
it or get run over.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
The world is round, it's time to embrace it.
yeah, it's analogous to you grow up with music that you really like, and as you grow older, you try to stay open to new music, but you can't quite get there, and you end up kind of being marginalized listening to this certain decade or two of music. It's kind of like that, where I think we need to continually go back and see what's happening and embrace the new, because I think students are thinking differently now than when we were in school. Their world is different. Their self-conception has changed. And that's something that I think is hard for us to imagine. And I know I talk about education all the time with people, and it's invariably we bring our own narrative to the conversation, and our own narrative is what we experienced as kids, and that's never going to change. We're always going to reference that in some way, even if we try not to. So I think it's helpful to think that our students today, when they grow up and are our age, they're going to be in that same place of looking back and trying to make sense of this world that in some ways can be impenetrable. So I think the more we can do to support it and give them the tools and the skills that they need to be able to analyze and use it to develop and live happy and healthy lives, the better. And that's where I think MCTV is a critical piece. So it's great work.
And a recorder of important civic life. Thank you, MCTV.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Bosworth.
So grab some food and mingle and come see the committee lab.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Oh,